You're listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in. Glad to have you with me. We steam forward towards LSU, Florida, Saturday afternoon in the Swamp. A 2:30 Central kickoff set for that. Both Brian Kelly and Billy Napier meeting with the media on the SEC Coaches Teleconference Wednesday. We will pass along anything newsworthy that comes out of there the rest of the week as we go along. Do want to look at one thing that Brian Kelly said Monday about maybe some more young players on defense, specifically in the back end, and a bit of a thumbnail on what he has on the Florida Gators as well as we hit the midweek point here of game week. Also, thumbnail preview, LSU, Kansas State men's hoops, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central, your tip-off there in Manhattan, Kansas, as LSU faces the Wildcats for the third consecutive years. A lot of interesting angles created in that one. It's a team that Matt McMahon is very familiar with, as I said, having faced them 3 consecutive years in a row. Or I should say this will be the third consecutive year in a row. So buckle up. Glad to have you here with me. Be sure to share, like, subscribe. Follow me on social media as well. That's greatly appreciated. At Musso Matthew on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as well. You can find me there at Matthew Musso1 if you do feel so inclined. All right, let's jump right into it. We'll get to the men's hoop. Let's start with LSU football as per usual. Brian Kelly on Monday at his weekly press conference to kick off Florida game week was asked about young players in the secondary, and specifically more towards the back end. Safety has been a point of contention all season long for this LSU team. All season long for this LSU team. Where you'll remember early, they were just rotating guys in and out, in and out, in and out. You saw 6, 7 different guys playing safety. And LSU hit their bye week going into the Ole Miss week. And Brian Kelly said the time for rotating is done. We have to figure out who can help us play and help us win in SEC games. And we broke that down. We went through it, looked at snap counts, looked at who they were favoring, performances, grades, all of that. And I told you basically they had one of 2 options. They could go all veterans or they could go with the mix. And Brian Kelly was on record at that point of saying they liked the mix. He was talking about really having, a guy like Deshaun Spears, Sage Ryan on the field at the same time, or Deshaun Spears, Jordan Gilbert on the field at the same time. Have a veteran and a young guy, and we like that. That's what he said. We played the quote weeks ago when we were having this conversation on this show. And that led me to believe, looking at snap counts, you had seen a guy like Deshaun Spears play a lot and at a lot of different positions, both in the box and out. He was everywhere on the field for LSU. And I really thought going in, because they had worked him so much, because of the upside that player had, that there was a good chance you'd see him start. And the only reason you wouldn't is because LSU wanted to go with the veterans. Well, LSU went with the veterans. And now you're here, the second week of November, and safety is still a point of contention. So is it time to get the young guys back in there? And Brian Kelly was asked about that at his Monday press conference. He didn't necessarily answer the question how it was intended to be asked. How it was intended to be answered. He didn't answer the question how it was asked, I should say. He took it more of a route of red shirts and, is that holding back some of the young guys getting in? Here's what Brian Kelly had to say about young guys, the back end of the defense.
We have, from a defensive standpoint, it is all hands on deck. If we feel like you can help us, we have already identified the players that if they can help us, the 4-game situation relative to redshirting is out the window. So if we feel like there's a player that can come in and help our defense, we've already talked to the young man. We've already got clearance. We've already said, can we play you? And they've said, yes, I'm not worried about my red shirt. So anybody that plays from now on out, it's that they've got games remaining not to hit that 4-game threshold, or they've given us clearance to do that. We're going to play them.
So anyone that they put in, for one, they feel like they can help them. Like they feel like they can help the team. Two, they've had a red shirt conversation. That's out the window. Like, they don't care about the red shirt. They're ready to go in. The other thing he said there was all hands on deck. Okay, well, if it's all hands on deck, and this is all hands on deck, that tells me one of two things. Either he's using the red shirt thing kind of as a guise, and I don't mean that as a shot. Believe me, that's not. I know that can maybe be how that comes out. It's just, anyone that we've, that we can play that's playing for us that we talk to, that's out the window. And it's not a guise in a sense because we're about to go through some numbers, and you'll see guys who have played, freshmen who have played in more than 4 games, and they're ready to go. So it's more that we feel like they can help us thing. That's him, I guess, saying they don't feel like the freshmen are ready to go out there. I say, oh well. I know that's easy for me to say. I don't coach the team, right? It's not my job at stake. It's not for a long-term performance review, right? I fully understand that. It's easy for me to sit here and say that. But you have a backdoor path into this thing still. You need some help, but you have a backdoor path into this thing still. It's very slight. Like, the chances are low. And in order to do that, I don't necessarily know if the veterans are just your, let me not even say it that way. I don't think the veterans are your straight path to doing it. I think you need to mix in the young guys more. I'm not saying completely bench veterans and sit them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you need more out of your young guys. I want to see you trust in them a little bit more. And if they go out there and they make a mistake, oh well. Because your veterans are making mistakes. Like, they are. I guess I'm kind of at a point with it where I don't see how, and again, I don't mean this to come across as a shot, but like, is it any worse? Can it be any worse than just the unstable position that safety has been all season long? You look at, a guy like Deshaun Spears. Let's just start with him. He was all over the field for LSU early in the season, as we mentioned, getting a lot of reps. If you're just looking at conference play, he has played in all 5 of LSU's conference games. But since that South Alabama game, when they really, turned it on, like, okay, who's going to play for us? The most snaps he's played in the game is 13. That was against A&M. His snap count is 3 against Ole Miss, 5 against Arkansas, 13 against A&M, 8 against Alabama. Whereas he played 44 against South Carolina when they were rotating everybody in. Deshaun Spears was the number 1 safety in the country coming out. This is a guy that has tremendous upside. Give me a little bit more of it. I'm not saying you got to go out there playing 40-some-odd snaps. Can we get that to 25? Can he just split half the game and let's see what he can actually do here down the stretch? That's just something I'm interested in. Same thing with a guy like Kylan Jackson. You saw Kylan Jackson's snap counts really start to pick up, and the red shirts burned for him, y'all. Like, I mean, he's played in 6 games this year as a freshman for LSU, but only 2 SEC games. He played 1 snap against Ole Miss, 7 against Arkansas. Grades weren't great there. I can understand that. But, what can you get a little bit more out of him? You've moved him around in coverage and in the box as well. For what it's worth, with Spears, you can look at the grades and be like, okay, I mean, that's why. Maybe they don't trust them so, as much right now. But this is your last-ditch effort here across these last 3 games. That's mainly why, I want to see more of the younger guys back there. I mean, even a guy like Javian Toviano. And Toviano, I mean, it's been a whirlwind for him so far in his time at LSU. That's a guy who played a lot for you down. He played in the last 4 games for you last year as a true freshman. You would hope he'd get some experience, and just hasn't really necessarily been able to take that jump yet. 3 snaps against Ole Miss, 9 against Arkansas, 13 against Bama. That's a former 5-star. That's where this is getting a little concerning in a sense as well, because you're looking to these guys to kind of be the future. You're looking to expand, or not expand. You're looking to refurb this roster, and these guys are supposed to be the foundation, and then you're going to add on to it with these next 2 recruiting classes. You need them to take steps. A lot of these, guys who eventually become stars at LSU are playing late in their freshman year or late early in their career very regularly. You haven't been able to see that yet. I'm hoping LSU gives these young guys the chance to do that down the stretch. You see them in game time really take the next step and are able to springboard into the rest of their careers and are able to be that foundation that you're hoping for. And also, I think it can help you win some football games down the stretch as well. Again, I'm not asking you to completely supplement your veterans. I'm just hoping for increased snap counts for the younger guys so they can get more experience and hopefully help you win some football games. I hope that point kind of came across there really at the end. Felt like I might have rambled a little bit too much there. But that's ultimately what I'm getting at is increased snap counts so these guys can help you win and also help develop then for the growth that they have. Because you have a lot of upside in the young guys in that secondary, and I'm ready to see them reach it. Or begin to reach it, I should say. All right, let's switch gears. LSU hoops. Tigers off to a 2-0 start here in year 2 under Matt McMahon. They travel to the Little Apple on Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central tip-off, as we said earlier. And it's their first test. And for what it's worth, it's Kansas State's first test. There's a lot to learn about both of these teams still as the season goes forward. Again, you're just 2 games into this. But if you look at this from an LSU perspective, they dominated ULM to open the season. 35-point win for LSU in that one, 95-60. Then against Alabama State, it is a bit of a struggle there for LSU. Down at the half, as a matter of fact, in that ball game were the Tigers, who scored 32-26. They were down 6 at the break, but a strong second half led by Jordan Sears and Cam Carter. Each of them with 18 second half points allowed LSU to go on a 34-11 run in the second half and erased the deficit and would beat Alabama State 74-61. You look at this from a Kansas State perspective, really kind of similar for the Wildcats. They dominated a team from Louisiana to open their season in UNO. 89-65 was their final score there, and then struggled a little bit with Cleveland State. It was a real close second half, which allowed the Vikings to kind of make a run at trying to close the gap. Ultimately, they couldn't do it, and Kansas State would pull off that victory too. As we mentioned earlier, third consecutive year these teams will meet. Go back to Matt McMahon's first year. That was the Cayman Islands game, 61-59. Kansas State won that. It was the clock malfunction at the end, all the confusion, and Matt McMahon said, we're never going to play there again, and I don't blame him. Last season, Kansas State came to Baton Rouge, and it was a 15-point win for the Wildcats. LSU was a rough team early in the year and got better throughout. The interesting thing about the game a season ago, Kansas State's leading scorer in that game was Cam Carter with 21. He now plays for LSU. Not to say the Wildcats don't have players. They do. What you're going to see in this game, a lot of guard play, heavy guard play in this game. Now, what's interesting, Kansas State does have 2 big wings who really take up the rebounding in the game as well. I mean, one of the wings, 6'9", 220, was on the team last year. That's David Ngesson, and he averages 16 and 9. I want to see how LSU goes about rebounding in this game. It's a battle that I definitely want to keep an eye on here, just because you're going to see smaller lineups kind of throughout. It's going to be, like I said, a lot of guards, but LSU has rebounded well so far this season, averaging 39 on the year early to Kansas State's 35, but your leading rebounder is Jai Bailey, a guard, through 2 games, 6'5", 195. So Jalen Reed is really the guy that's provided the most size, for LSU. You've seen Robert Miller a little at 6'10", but Reed has been the guy, 6'10", 240, that's kind of been able to provide the size. Can he impose his will a little bit from a forward position, maybe against some of these wings and get the rebounds? Cam Carter, I can't wait to watch him playing his former team. You know he's going to have some extra juice. He's averaging 21 points a game on the nose through 2. That's what he scored the first 2 games in both. 21 points on the nose. Amazing consistency. You've seen a lot of impressive things, I think, early from Jordan Reed as well. From Jordan Sears. Jordan Sears as well. LSU's 4 guys in the double figures. So rebounding, always going to be key. And LSU's been able to be pretty active with their hands so far early in the season. A lot of steals. Tigers, a lot of good defensive pressure. Kind of want to see that as well. Can they keep that up against a step up in competition, going to power competition? And then look, y'all, the 3-pointers. I mean, we talked about it. LSU is going to shoot more 3-pointers this season. It's what Matt McMahon wants. They went out and got all those guards. You look at the first game, they put up 34 3-pointers in the first game. 34. Out of 67 shots. They made 29.4% of them. They got off to a really slow start against ULM and then found it a little bit towards the end of the first half to create the separation. You look at that second game, they put up 20 3-pointers out of 47 shots. They made 35%. It's a little bit better. You're increasing. How can they do it with the step up in competition? They have done a great job creating open looks at threes. They just have to start going in a little bit more. So that's something else kind of to keep an eye on. K-State averages 3 guys in double figures so far on the season. We'll see if LSU can kind of salvage one here in this little 3-game set, if you will. Kansas State has won the first 2 the previous 2 years. LSU, you're expecting them to take a step. This will be a good measuring stick early in the season for the Tigers before they get into, obviously, SEC play, which is a heck of a challenge this season because it's a really deep league. But you also have 2 more games in the non-conference against ACC opponents. You'll face Pittsburgh on the 22nd, and you'll face Florida State on December the 3rd in the SEC-ACC Challenge. So, first big test of the season coming Thursday night, 8 p.m., but it'll be a great measuring stick as well for year 3 under Matt McMahon early. We'll continue to talk about it. We'll recap it as well on LSU Daily, so keep it locked here. Subscribe, share, like, follow me on social media. All of it greatly appreciated, and be here next time for more on LSU Daily.